Welcome back to the Bear Down Abroad podcast with me, Ant, in Gothenburg. And unbelievably, in the summertime, it started to rain again. But here we are, back towards training camp, back towards all those things. And for our Irish fans, we're even going to talk about Mayo's curse in the 75 years. But before we get into that, we have a sensational guest from the absolute renowned Hogan John's podcast, CHGO Bears, all those kind of things. We've got Adam Hoge joining us. So you don't really want to be listening to me talking about this to start up. You want to hear from the real man himself. So Tony, hit it.
Welcome back to the Bear Down Abroad podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. It's been a bit of a hiatus for us. We took a week or two off for the summer holidays. It was the sun was shining in Scotland. It doesn't happen very often, so we thought we'll take advantage of it. But we're back. Training camp is back, and who better to start off our summer roadshow, if you like, than with CHGO's very own Adam Hoge. Adam, thanks very much for joining us. First and foremost, how are things? How's your summer been? Have you had much downtime?
Yes, I am also coming off a little bit of a hiatus to charge up for training camp here. And you know, you probably see the tan in my face a little bit, and it'll disappear quickly once we get deep into football season. But that's all right. The weather, you know, I watched the Open, and that's about as good as weather I can remember up there in Scotland for an entire weekend. So you guys must be having it good.
Yeah, I got a suntan, man. I'm actually usually paler than this. I'm usually a sort of blue color. So you know, I got the white, which was good. So you know, can't complain.
Yeah, I'm wearing a hat purely because here in Sweden, the red would just absolutely kill the screen. So I'm doing it well for everybody just to keep it under the wraps. Yeah, Adam, thanks so much for jumping on. We're gonna get involved in it, get stuck in because I'm so excited about this Bear season coming up. The years that which Tony and me had to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning watching the Bears getting destroyed, to finally having some remnants of a really, really good team, having the quarterback, having the head coach, having all these different weapons that we have. And we saw announced a couple of days ago, we start with Caleb, because where else better to start on, his positioning in the top 100. And I'd like to get your thoughts before we even go into training camp about his position at 49. And what's your take on that? Is that too high, too low? What's your when you saw him come out this early, what was your initial thought?
Yeah, I always take that top 100 list with a little bit of grain of salt because I've seen how it gets put together, and sometimes the lack of effort that's been put in, the way that they sort of ballot the players inside the locker room in the middle of you know, a season that's not even over yet. Now I know more work is done behind the scenes when the season's over, the interviews you see on the shows that actually debut. But you know, I don't always look at those rankings as an accurate reflection of, you know, if you really wanted to get a group of coaches, GMs, maybe some media in there, players as well, and kind of weight it in a bunch of different ways, look at it in a bunch of different ways, it would probably come out a little bit different. That being said, since it is voted on by the players and it is a kind of, I still look at it as a level of respect from your peers. So I look at it more from the standpoint of at least he's on the list. At least he did get that respect. I'm less worried about where exactly he should he be in the top 25. I kind of think he probably should have been inside the top 30. But you know, I was actually looking at some of my notes from last year, from training camp a couple weeks ago, and I noticed one of the things we were talking about, I believe it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, that Jalen Johnson I think it was last year, that Jalen Johnson wasn't in the top 100 at all. And you know, that's coming off a strong season in which you would think among if he's a top cornerback in the league, he should be in the top 100 players. So those are kind of the more glaring issues I sometimes see with that list, the players that are completely snubbed altogether. So I think where Caleb's at in his career, to show up in the top 50 is a good thing.
Yeah, and I almost sort of feel like Ben Johnson had a hand in, not letting it go too high. We've seen how Ben Johnson would treat Caleb Williams like every other member of that roster, keeping him sort of grounded, and the impact that that had on him as a player, and also how he's viewed by his teammates and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, joking, I doubt he had that much of a hand in the top 100, but even still, it's great to see a Chicago Bears quarterback anywhere near the top 100 list, and certainly in that kind of top end of it as well. Obviously, we've had three now with Joe Thuney kind of coming out earlier on today at number 49. Interestingly, his first ever appearance in the top 100, considering how well respected he is around the league, and all that he's done, which is crazy. Joe Thuney obviously going to be a central focus point for this team moving forward as well. In terms of the actual top 100, just to kind of round that part out, what's your got a guess in terms of how many more Bears that we actually see on that list before the start of the season?
So what was the first one again? So I know Thuney just got named and Caleb got named. Montez Sweat. That's right. Yeah. I mean, Darnell Wright should probably be in there. He was an All-Pro. But
can we dream Colston Loveland?
Yeah, I feel like, so we talked about this on our show, and I feel like because of the timing of the voting, at least from when I see it being done in the locker room, Colston Loveland came on so late last season that I just feel like it hadn't resonated yet across the league. In terms of the names that just come to your head right away when you're putting on the spot, like, hey, who's the top tight ends in the league, or who's the top 100 players? So that one would probably surprise me. That being said, if you told me he's easily in the list next year, I would definitely believe that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I find the idea around Colston Loveland, because we were live doing the draft when he was taken, and our reaction was one of like, oh, okay. Now every single Bears fan forgets that conversation ever happened, and we're like, oh my God, this guy is the greatest tight end we've ever seen, and all his weapons that we have, and all the excitement that comes with it. And I think it goes to show how far we've come as an organization and a fan base, where the trust level's there, which means that the draft this year, I think a lot of Bears fans were looking at it and going, actually, do you know what? We're going to trust the organization now. We take a tight end in day two. We're going to take a wide receiver when everyone was screaming for a defensive lineman or an edge, and everyone's excited to see this coming. In Chicago right now, is that the way they're looking at it from a fan perspective, media perspective around this draft? There's like a little bit of trust there based on what's happened last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a higher level of trust, but there was definitely still a high level of anxiety over the fact that they didn't really address the pass rusher. I push back on that quite a bit, because I've seen too many times over the years mistakes made when you get too zeroed in on focusing on needs, and you end up passing on really good players. So I like the approach I've seen the last 2 years. I think that it's a very good thing that Ben Johnson seems to be bought in on the idea that, hey, we can't get too focused on whatever the top need is. Instead, just take the best players that they really feel like are there. And now I could also see some people sort of roll their eyes at that, because oftentimes the last 2 years, it's happened to be needs for Ben Johnson too at the same time. Getting another tight end this year, right? Or going after somebody like Xavier Thomas. But Xavier Thomas is, I think, first and foremost a special teams ad in the return game. And I, for one, have been someone that's been saying for a while now that I they need a little bit of an extra gear there in the return game. And I think that the Bears are looking at this. Remember, Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, has been very involved in these rule changes over the last few seasons, in pretty much all of this discussion. So I would hope the Bears would sort of be ahead of the game in attacking that position. Now, remember, the first year they put in the new return rule, the kickoff return, we didn't actually see the return spike as much as everybody thought, because they were a little bit reluctant to penalize the touchback all the way to the 35-yard line. Once they went all the way in last year and did make that adjustment to the 35, then all of a sudden those return numbers spiked. So I could see how it took a year to actually see the evidence, to know that the data is there. Okay, now we've seen the data. Let's go attack it with a really talented returner who we think can provide us with an explosive play to start every single drive. I think that's very smart forward thinking by the Bears. Whether or not the pick works out or not, I like the logic in that. So when you start to kind of break this down on a granular pick by pick basis and the logic behind all of it, I could buy every single move that they made in the draft, even if it meant they didn't add a pass rusher. But to give up like potentially three picks, give up Xavier Thomas, perhaps give up Sam Roush, just because you want to move up to go get this pass rusher that has its own risks, that's, you could do it, but that sounds even riskier to me than what the Bears did.
Yeah, I think sometimes you've just got to go with what's available sometimes. And I think especially, we talked about this in previous shows, I think what Ryan Poles has done is he's heavily invested on that defensive line last offseason, and he's banking on that eventually paying off. I mean, you talk about Odeyingbo, big money spent on him, a guy, a lot of upside, a lot of stuff to prove, obviously. You've got Gervon Dexter, a guy who's maybe in a bit of a prove-it season as well. You had a lot of kind of moves that were made along the interior of the defensive line where folk got injured or it just didn't work out for whatever reason, and you're hoping, right, well, you've had a full year, you can recover, you then have a full off season again, full training camp. Can we regroup and kind of go with this again? Because we had a plan in place in terms of what we wanted to do, but for various external factors, it just didn't work out. So yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on with that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how those players come back and respond to that sort of adversity of, Dio's motivated now, all that kind of stuff. Is he actually motivated? Is he going to use that ridicule to kind of accelerate himself a wee bit? But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Just before I kind of jump on to the next question there, Adam, just very quickly, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tallybrand, who are official partners with us at the Bear Down Abroad podcast. So make sure that you go onto the Tallybrand website, tallybrand.com. Lots of cool stuff on there, including these lovely hats that Ant and I are currently modeling. Also, if you go on there and you use the Tallybrand discount code abroad, you will get free shipping, and you will also get some of these lovely free stickers as well. I have hundreds of these things lying around my house now, and it makes the place look a lot better than it otherwise would do. And also, some big news. You might remember, guys, we had a giveaway about a month ago. We're going to be doing another one. I'm going to put some stuff out on X later on so you can have a look at that, but we're going to be giving away one of these lovely Tallybrand Trucker FGB hats. You can have it in this color or white, whichever you prefer. But I will send out the details on that later on after the show, but just to let you guys know about that. Adam, tomorrow's a big day. Vets obviously reporting back to Hallis Hall. First practice is going to be on Wednesday, which is closed to the public, which is fair enough being the first practice. What I wanted to ask you, though, is tomorrow, obviously, you're going to get the chance to speak to Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles. Last preseason, rather, we got some big news on that first press conference with the Jalen Johnson injury, etc. Are you anticipating or hearing of anything that might be some news that we might hear tomorrow, or are we just hoping for a quiet day?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, we'll get to hopefully get a little bit more context on what's going on with Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards. The two names that popped up, Gordon already going on PUP and TJ Edwards with a non-football injury, which was similar to how Jalen Johnson's camp started last year with an injury. That means if you suffer an injury outside of the building during the the off season part where they're not in doing any football activities at Hallis Hall, just put you on a separate list with a little bit of a different rule. But, I was more surprised by TJ Edwards. I mean, just the rhetoric with Kyler Gordon, some of which has come from the head coach, and just the level of disappointment right now in his availability. I was already sort of bracing for the idea that he might not be ready to go for camp. But we need more information. We need to know. Remember last year when Jalen Johnson, they said he'd miss a few weeks with a leg injury, and then it turned into something that we didn't see him until week 2 of the season, I think, and then he was just something that affected him all year. Because if that's where this is headed with Kyler Gordon, then they have an issue at slot corner. I mean, they need to go out and get somebody already. And so I think that's probably what the feeling out process will be here for the first few weeks of camp is, can Kyler come back? If he does come back, can he stay on the field? And if they are looking at preseason game number 2, and they're in a situation where they can't trust him or don't feel like he's going to be able to be reliable, which I would say we're already sort of into that territory for sure. Then I think you got to start looking at acquisitions. And remember, there's always sort of a couple week into training camp free agency spree that always happens. There's also moves you can make at the end of roster cut downs. We have seen an increase in trades over, I'd say, the last 5 or so years at the end of training camp. And you just look at last year, right? They picked up CJ Gardner-Johnson a few weeks into the season, and he ended up playing a pretty big role. So I don't think it's any reason to panic right now in terms of who the hell are you going to get to join? You got to jump on this now. There will be more opportunities to pick up somebody if they need to, so they can still be a little bit patient. But the concern level is definitely high. And then in terms of TJ Edwards, that name surprised me more because we saw him return at the end of OTAs and minicamp. And this is obviously something else on top of that because if it was just last year's injury, he would just be on PUP. And I know Aaron Rappaport reported it was just like a muscle strain or something like that. But all of a sudden, we're starting to see a little bit of a history here now of muscle pulls and soft tissue injuries with him as well. And sometimes with these guys, they just start to, and this has been Kyler Gordon's case, they just start to pile on, and then one leads to another, and they never quite get over it. And I'm disappointed because I thought that there would be, with last year's issues with the amount of soft tissue injuries that the Bears had, I imagine they tried to make some type of changes this offseason to try to avoid them. But, for some players, it just becomes chronic. And even if TJ Edwards end up only missing a few days and then he's out there, which sometimes happens with some of these PUPs and NFIs, you don't really want to worry about them too much until you're a week or 2 into camp and they're still missing. The good news is I think the Bears have a little bit more depth at linebacker than they do at slot corner right now. And so I think they can survive at linebacker a little bit better.
I've been saying this on the show for weeks. I think the frustration around Kyler Gordon for Ben Johnson and DA is more about the fact that because we're not going to get as much pressure off the edge or D-line, we'll be wanting to do pressure coming from slot corner, from safety, from linebackers. And that's why I think we've increased our speed. That's where a lot of our moves towards speed is, because you're going to see a lot more blitzing from absolutely everywhere, because that's the only way we're going to, not only way, but that's the quickest way to recover from the issues we may have inside in our defensive line. And therefore, Kyler Gordon would be the perfect player for that within our team. So therefore, that's where the frustration comes from, and you add on. And I think his history already shows with Ben Johnson that he doesn't have a long leash on players who are not available. So I think Kyler is not just behind the 8 ball. If there was 3 or 4 8 balls, he'd be way beyond that. I think he has to unbelievably perform. Look at Brisker last year, played all the games, didn't matter. You look at what Kyler's going to be there. So I think that's really interesting. And you mentioned about TJ Edwards. I'm sad to see the rookie Keyshawn Elliott injured on PUP as well, because I think there's a real opportunity for him with special teams, but also with these injuries at linebacker. So those are little worries. But from where we were last time, the one question mark for me is around our offensive line, because it was so good last year, so powerful. The moves that were made, our coaching ticket is amazing at our offensive line, but I wouldn't be the biggest Braxton Jones fan. Not saying he's a bad left tackle, not at all. I think he's serviceable. But if we want to take the next step forward, we need more than just a serviceable left tackle. So then when you bring in Jedrick Wills, when it comes to that, and even Theo Benedet, when it comes to that going into camp, what are you looking for out of Braxton Jones to alleviate someone like me saying what I just said?
Well, look, the reality is until those pads go on, probably sometime next week, we really cannot evaluate too much of what we're seeing with the offensive and defensive lines. But couple little clues I think we can follow from what we saw in the spring. One is, I will say Braxton Jones looks healthier. Last year I had written in my notes right away when he came back that, he had a sleeve on that leg and there was obvious atrophy. And then as we learned, he just wasn't quite able to get, whether it was strength or conditioning or all the above coming off that injury, wasn't just where he needed to be able to play 4 quarters of football in the NFL, which is a really hard thing to do. You need to be ready for it, especially offensive linemen. You don't get to rotate like defensive linemen. You got to be out there every snap. You're in a high-flying offense where Ben Johnson wants to get 60, 70 plays going every single week. And so you got to be ready for that. And what we learned was Braxton Jones could be pretty good in the first half, and then his play would tail off as the game went on. And then eventually that just became like, okay, we can't live with this. We gotta make a change. And that's where you saw Ozzie Trapillo get the opportunity. So all of that's to say, the early signs for me from the spring is I think Braxton Jones will be in a much better position to be able to do those things this year. He looks healthier. And he knows what went wrong last year. The Bears know what went wrong, and their actions back it up because of the contract that they gave him to give him an opportunity here. I didn't think he'd get that opportunity. I thought that they were going to move on. So that alone gives me some optimism that to bring back a player that they actually benched last year, the reasoning behind it wasn't necessarily, we're just done with this guy. He's not good enough. He doesn't put in the work. It was more so, that was the injury. And now we feel like he's better. We like his work ethic. We like the player. Otherwise, you don't give him that money. So that's where my optimism that this could be a better year for him comes from. I also don't think we're talking about a lockdown left tackle, that's ever going to be an all-pro. But I think that's okay as long as you're strong at the other 4 spots. And we know that the Bears are pretty strong at 3 of the 4 other spots. So the Jedrick Wills thing would be the other clue too, that we just didn't see him enough in the spring, and that's concerning to me. So I just feel like that's a long shot. And same thing with Karan Amagaji. Like, they're there, they're part of this, but this really feels like it's Braxton Jones' job to lose.
Yeah, because I think the offensive line was obviously a clear strength of this team last year. Really, really benefited, the scheme, and particularly, Caleb Williams in his second year. So obviously you've got that sort of issue at left tackle. You then get the center problem as well, and you're just like, what one is the bigger sort of camp battle or whatever you want to call it, sort of thing. And for me, I think I sort of look at left tackle and think that there's definitely more uncertainty there than there is at center. And I think, you look at Ben Johnson said earlier in the offseason, talking about Garrett Bradbury, saying he's loud, he's demonstrative, he's going to be able to get all the 5 guys on the same page. For me, that those words are endorsing that center position as like Garrett Bradbury is our guy this year for definite. I don't see the moving of Logan Jones unless something significant happens. And I think, in that sense as well, I'll ask you, do you think that is an ideal situation for Logan Jones to be able to just sit there for the next year behind Bradbury, learn his trade, and then kind of come in next year possibly and take over at that spot? Or do you think that there is actually a genuine chance that Bradbury isn't the starter all season?
Well, I think there's a genuine chance. I haven't seen enough of it yet to really look. I'll just say that I can see all possibilities at center, because I always try to go back in time almost to what the situation was when the player acquisition decisions were made. So when they get Garrett Bradbury, they're in an extremely weird spot where a good player retired on them and they didn't know it was coming. I thought it was and they don't know that they're going to get Logan Jones. They might like Logan Jones at that point, but they have no guarantee that he's going to be there or available to draft. Basically a month and a half after they signed Garrett Bradbury. So I thought that acquisition made a lot of sense at the time, and them going out, moving a future 5th round pick for a guy that played in the Super Bowl. But then it turns out Logan Jones is available for them to draft, and they feel like, he's the player that they really love. Now, so how do you handle that going forward? Well, I think the part for Logan Jones that is going to matter is what you brought up there, Tony, which was the trust level they have in Garrett Bradbury to get everything lined up, to get everything set, to help a young quarterback in Caleb Williams, get everybody on the same page and make sure that there's fewer false starts, pre-snap issues, and they're snapping the ball on time. And that could be a lot for a rookie. As talented as Logan Jones might be, he's going to have to prove that very, very quickly here in training camp that he's got all that locked down. And that kind of seems like a long shot to me a little bit, just because he is a rookie and you are talking about then a really young center with a young quarterback, and you just don't want to see any of that stuff start reverting back to the mess that it was, especially at the start of last season when there were way too many pre-snap issues. That being said, the Logan Jones history is encouraging, and it's a pedigree of a guy who can adapt and pick up on things and learn very, very fast. Remember, he was a defensive lineman at Iowa, and they ran out of centers, and they basically came to him and were like, you need to play center. And we're not talking about like Tennessee's offense where they're just sort of high flying, no huddle. Yeah, we're talking about smash mouth Big Ten football. And he flipped sides of the ball at a place where they're known for offensive line play, where they have, the guys that they recruit, that they develop, they know exactly what they want in Iowa. And he very quickly became not just a starter, but a good player and answered the bell. So that tells me that he will be able to pick up on all that stuff relatively quickly at the NFL level. But he's going to have to do it fast, and he's also going to have to play well before they're pushing Garrett Bradbury. Now, the other thing is injuries happen. And so it could be any given day at training camp where someone goes down, and all of a sudden all of what I just said goes out the window. And it's sort of what happened at Iowa, where it's like, you just got to go play now, and we're going to live with the results.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us. We were buzzed, we were buzzed to get you on the show. I'm not just doing this, we say in Ireland, blowing smoke. I'm not just blowing smoke. It's a real honor to have you on. I know you and Alan Johns have come on outside of CHGO. Hogan John's podcast have kept me over here, kept up in touch with everything. So keep doing exactly what you're doing. Before you do go, I do have one request for you, right? In Ireland, we have a thing, I know you're a big sports fan. In Ireland, we have a thing called the All-Ireland Football Final. So it's an Irish sport, and 82,500 people come to the final every year. And Mayo, which would be a relatively big team, won the trophy yesterday for the first time in 75 years, which was a massive deal in the whole country of Ireland, and it went a little bit global. So we've got to send you on the clip and have a look at it and come back to us and let you know what you think. Okay. You won't be able to understand the commentator. You won't be able to understand what's going on, right? But trust me on this one, it's a massive deal in Ireland, and it's something that I'm trying to get everyone that listens to it to get involved. Enjoy yourself in camp. Thank you again so much for jumping on. We really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah, let me just say this on the way out. I mean, we know that our international viewers, listeners, but especially those in the UK and across Europe, are a huge part of what we do. As soon as we started picking up on it a few years into Hogan Johns, how many people were listening abroad, that really opened up our eyes. And being in London for the game a couple of years ago, just the amount of people we met from not just from the UK, but all over Europe. It was fantastic. I am personally bummed that we're not, we don't have a game there this year. but we know we have fans everywhere, and but especially the UK. And so if you haven't checked us out before, come check us out. But it's great what you guys are doing with this podcast too. And it's just very cool to see Bears fans all across the world. And it is not lost on me how much of them are following what we do. So very cool. And I hope we get a game in Europe next year, because I mean, I'd love to go there every year. Also, Tony, what is it, 9:30 where you are?
Yeah.
And it's still, it's so light out behind you. That blows my mind.
So Scottish summer and an Irish summer as well. It'll probably stay light until about 10:30 there.
That's awesome.
However, in the winter time, it gets dark at like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
so
I would not like that.
Well, it's 10:30 in Sweden, and I'm telling you now, it's starting to get cold already, and we're starting the end of July. Now, cold, relevant to cold. Irish people, we love anything that has the yellow thing in the sky. We take that all day long.
Yeah. All right, guys. This was awesome. Thank you. Would love to do it again, and appreciate everything you guys do.
Cheers,
Appreciate
Adam.
you. Look after yourself. Thanks, man.
Look after yourself. Cheers. And that was Adam Hoge. So glad he was able to join us for 30 minutes there. Just double checking, is it definitely light enough in this room, though? I know it's light outside. Can you guys see
good.
me?
And Rob will love it even more because your hat is glistening perfectly with the light. So he's loving it.
It's nice.
If Rob is still in the chat, Rob, let me know. My son Theo, who's only 6, has literally taken the FGB hat and it's now his. So I'm going to get a photograph of him in that, and if I'm allowed, send it to him. He can mark it away by all means. Girlfriend has the other hat, so I'm left with just this one. So, Jennifer, if you're listening, I want my hat back.
This is definitely my favorite one. Although I haven't got one of the trucker ones yet. That's the one I want to get next for definite. Scottish Bear in the chat. It will be dark in Scotland this time next week. The summer is almost at an end, so disappointing, but. We got 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks, man. I can't complain. As I said to Adam earlier on, I went from pale blue to white. So, great tan. Can't complain. Really, really good. And we'll kick on. Just had a quick question for you in terms of everybody's talking about Caleb Williams and what Caleb Williams is going to look like and what he needs to do in year 2 with Ben Johnson or just year 3, generally speaking. But the question I wanted to ask you was, looking at Ben Johnson. So for Ben Johnson, last year for him at the Bears was the year where he came in, he brought players on that he wanted, he changed the culture, we became a much better team, we started winning games, we got to a playoff, right? Is there now this point where we're just at the second season for Ben Johnson where it's no longer a hope that we might do things, it's an expectation? And is the pressure much bigger now, or is it the fact that the team are getting better that they can just kind of roll along? Like, is the pressure more on Ben Johnson than Caleb Williams, or vice versa? What do you think of that?
I think there is a weird feeling within this team that they enjoy that pressure, and I think they want that pressure. And there's a big difference in sport in how you handle that pressure, whether you want it. And I really believe both Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams want the pressure. I think. You mentioned a point earlier on. I think Caleb Williams will be pissed off on where he was in the top 100, and Ben Johnson will be delighted because it's able to use that as fire to hit him again, because I'm convinced Caleb Williams believes he should be in the top 20. I also believe he should be in the top 25. But I think that pressure that comes with that is like in any sport. Any given Sunday, you don't know what's happened. Right now, we all think it's amazing, but you never know what's coming next. For me, though, what really excites me about this team is that they seem to enjoy that pressure. They seem to want that pressure and what comes with that. And I think that's the intriguing one. What's interesting for me when you look at that Caleb Ben dynamic is you got to remember this time last year, Caleb said he was drowning going into camp. He didn't know what he was doing. He was sleepless nights, didn't know if Ben Johnson liked him as a person, which says so much about Ben Johnson as a head coach. He doesn't want to be your friend. He wants to be your coach and wants to be your mentor. And I think that's the intriguing dynamic is Caleb knows now going into this year, it's his team and it's his time to play. And I think in a weird way, it almost feels like it's year 3. That's the development that we've got so quickly with those two as our main 2 guys.
Yeah, I think they're a great duo, a great combination. We've seen that in just that first year, and the hope is that grows. But there is definitely, for me, there's an expectation now. We need to, at the very, very least, make the playoffs again, but go that one step further than we did last year. Super Bowl, I don't know. There's a lot of questions on that team for me just now, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So until I actually see people playing, I can't really, I couldn't say for definite one way or the other whether or not I think we have enough to go all the way. Right now, I'd say we don't. And maybe it's another off season before we get to that stage. But one thing we just need to do is keep progressing, keep making those incremental improvements in every area this season, go that extra step forward, become a contender, become one of those teams that people talk about these guys are a legit team and they're there every year. That's not something we've been in for a long time. I mean, obviously we did really well last year, no doubt about it. Before that, 2018, before that, 2010. Do you know what I mean? So it's these gaps that we need to start filling. We can't have the gaps, of 8, whatever it is, years every time we want to do something. It needs to be consistent. But I think the difference now is that we've got a genuine, legitimate quarterback, and we've got a legitimate head coach as well. And they're both in the very early stages of their careers doing that. So to see those guys grow together will be huge for them.
Yeah, but there's such a big difference between this team right now going into this season than there was under Nagy and Trubisky. And that's not just those two, because we had Khalil Mack, we had a much better defense than we had offense back then, and our defense got us to where we were at that point. But the irony of all things is people forget Mitch Trubisky was actually quite good in that playoff game. People forget that game. Irrelevant. We never really felt comfortable at quarterback. We never felt comfortable at offense, and we didn't have a lot of weapons. Now it's the flip opposite. We've got the quarterback, in our opinion. We've got the weapons all over the place, tight end, running back, wide receivers. Our offensive line as a whole, Adam Hoge said earlier in the show, 4 out of 5 is what we need. Well, we're close to 3.5 in that with Garrett Bradbury. The problem is on the other side of the football, as you mentioned. So I think the way football is going, though, at the moment, you're gonna see more points scored, more opportunities there. So it's good to be in that side of the game than it will be the other way around. And you're never going to get the perfect team. I really wish I'd have asked Adam this question. Whenever people talk about the draft or why didn't we get an edge, I always go back to is when and who and for what price. It's never going to be that easy.
It's a difficult one. Because there's always moves to be made. There's always players that you could have paid over the odds for. But I know the Bears are trying to get away from doing that. But then you could argue maybe they did still play over the odds for other players that maybe haven't worked out. So it's curious. I just keep banking on like the defense. The guys that they brought in last season being the guys that are going to be making improvements to the team. So whether or not that actually works out or not, I don't know. But all I know is that we need to get Caleb Williams needs to be elevated to that level where he takes the next step. We're winning games because of him, but can he do that, all the time? I really don't want to wait until the last 5 minutes of the game, while I'm having a total coronary sitting in the living room watching the game. Like, Jesus Christ, can't even look at the thing, man. But listen, it's exciting TV. There's no doubt about that. Like, I almost think he's doing it deliberately. But at the same time, Madden cover expectation is you need to go out there and be one of those guys, So hopefully, as I say, we see it. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I know what you mean with the pass rush thing. But hopefully, we look at guys like Austin Booker. Hopefully, he's a guy that can eventually sort of live up to what we think he can be. He had that first season as a rookie in 2024 where played brilliant in the preseason. And then we got into the actual season and, more of a rotational guy, didn't really get in there. Was that because of Matt Eberflus not giving him an opportunity? Possibly. 2025, another great preseason, really, really making an impact, gets injured, comes back, does make an impact in that sort of last half of the season. But can he get a full year in there That's the main thing. I seen a photo of him on Twitter earlier on, looking great, looks in great shape. So you're just hoping that this can be the year that it happens. I think the pieces are all there. It's just a lot of it's luck, man. Just being in the right place at the right time and getting a wee rub of the green sort of thing. But I'm curious to see what happens. But in your opinion, has Ryan Poles gambled with this defense in the sense that he knows he's got this excellent offense now? He's got a quarterback that's going to score points. He's got the offensive mastermind and all that kind of thing. Is he gambling and just saying, well, do you know what? If we can just score more points than the other team, then that's all that matters. Or would you have liked to, is that a gamble?
Yeah, it is a gamble, but I don't think it's a gamble based on someone out there that you would gone, oh, we should have got him at that price in free agency, or we should have gone and got this guy instead of somebody else. I think that's the part of the gamble that I don't know whether that's the actual truth. I think what's intriguing for me is like I keep going back to it. Who was the guy in the draft we should have gone for, and for what value? So are you telling me Sam Roush and Xavier Thomas for a potential edge at the top of second round? If so, who? And it's that one. Now, that doesn't mean, and this goes back to your point all over and over again, that if they went after Montez Sweat's not brother, Josh Sweat, from the Arizona Cardinals in a trade, that I wouldn't be dancing around the place saying, yeah, give up a third round, conditional second round. And I'd be like, that would be thumbs up in the air all for that. So it's one of those interesting conundrums. I don't think you can blame Ryan. I don't want to play Monday Day quarterback and look back at it and go, we should have got an edge. Because whenever anyone says that to me, I'm going to go who and when and at what round or at what free agency. What's the move? Because I think at the moment it's worked out okay. Okay being the word. But Dennis Allen has got to come up with different ways of attacking this. And that's why I'm convinced, as I've said it over and over again, convinced we're going to see people blitzing from everywhere. We're going to become the Vikings because that's the only way we can slow teams down and get to the quarterback, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we'll know in the fullness of time. Obviously, we've got training camp starting this week. Veterans returning at Hallisall tomorrow. First practice on Wednesday. And then I think the pads won't come on until sometime next week, I would imagine. I don't actually know for sure, but I'm excited that we're actually got to this stage where we're going to see things start to come together. Everything's been theoretical at this point. We've had players come in, they've not played yet. We don't know what they're going to look like in the offense and the defensive scheme. So I'm just excited the fact that we've got to this stage eventually, and we can actually start to get some feedback on things. What I will say to everybody is that I say every offseason that we've been doing these shows is let's not overreact to every little thing that happens. We don't know what the plan for the training session is that day. It could be Caleb, only throw that way the whole time we're here. Just keep throwing that way. Don't overreact. Let's wait and see what happens in the actual games. You can overreact to them. There's no doubt about it. But for training, I think it's just exciting to have it back. Where are you with that, man? Are you one of those guys with the training camps that you get excited about it, or is it just another stage of the sort of pre-season where it's like, it's not a game yet?
It's another stage, but it's also cool to see Bear uniforms back on field on my Twitter feed, seeing the rookies, seeing different players come through, and who's going to be the darling of the off season that you never thought would happen, and suddenly you'll be crying when they don't get picked, and suddenly you're stunned when they're not picked up by any other team, or they go into a practice squad of some team and you never hear from them ever again.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, people forgetting that Sean Wright was taken roughly around now. And then he went on to have a sensational season. So then I started thinking, well, who's going to be this year's in Sean Wright? Mm-hmm. So it's cool to have it back. It's great that we can get back talking Bears football and people get back into it. It's been a cool summer because we had the Football World Cup. We had, if you're a baseball fan, both the Cubs and the White Sox are very good. If you're a GA hurling fan, there's been amazing games in that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's also great to have Bears football back and get it back and see them back in the field. Big one for me is just no injuries. Just get it through. Let's get yourself ready, and then we can properly go with that.
Yeah.
What's your take on it? What are you thinking?
I'm just excited to get closer to football. To be honest with you, I mean we're almost in August, which means pre-season, and for all people who think pre-season is a lot of nonsense, and can be. At least we can watch that first quarter where we see the starters out in the field, and things start to sort of take shape in terms of what we can expect moving forward a little bit. So I'm just excited to have, as you say, Bear stuff on there, and it's like actually interesting Bear stuff, rather than like dragging the arse out of like the same story for 4 weeks, just because there's nothing else to talk about. And we've been in that situation, trust me, guys. I've stuck this little link in here to the X post for the two lads from Mayo who were the radio commentators. You need to watch that or listen to this thing, guys. It's hilarious, and see the pure, utter joy in these guys, the voices, their faces. It's phenomenal, man. Please give it 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes, but it's worth it.
I'm going to give the quick background so anyone from America is listening. I mentioned it to Adam Hoge earlier on. So basically, the Mayo won their first in Ireland for 75 years, but the background story is insane. So they last won it in 1951, and on their way home from Dublin to Mayo, which is from one side of Ireland on the east coast to the west coast, supposedly the team drove past a funeral. And at the funeral, they drove past it and didn't disrespect the funeral in 1951. And supposedly a Catholic priest put a hex on the team and said, if anyone ever, as part of that team, while they're still alive, Mayo will never win in Ireland again. So from 1989 to 2026, Mayo were involved in 13 All-Irelands, if you include replays, and they lost every one of them. And one of the players, actually ironically living in New York at this stage, was still alive. And the last All-Ireland that Mayo were in was 2021. They lost that. Then the guy died in 2023. They never made it back to a final until yesterday. And they were massive underdogs. So all the guys that died in 1951's team were all underdogs, and they won it for the first time in 75 years. And those two guys on Mayo Radio, you won't, as I said earlier, you won't understand what they're saying, but you gotta watch it. It's pure passion, it's pure joy, and it's the reason why you love sport. You can talk about your Boston Red Sox and your Ollies that are great winning unbelievable, but I don't think there was nowhere else in the world that had the passion in Croke Park in Ireland yesterday from Mayo supporters, and I'm delighted for them all. And I'd say
who when Mayo were in the last 2021 All Ireland final in 2021, who beat them? Do you remember who beat them?
Donegal, wasn't it, or Dublin? Was it Donegal?
Tyrone beat them. Tyrone beat them on the way to the final this year, but because it's like a new format, they got another chance and they came back into it. So technically, Tyrone should be the All-Ireland champion.
Technically, we could look at a lot of things, but we won't go into that. Just give them their moment, Tony. For the love of God, give them their moment. No, it's epic. I really, really recommend everyone to keep an eye on it. We'll put it on this show, and we'll put it out on the feed ever. And I hope those two guys still have throats, because they were screaming the house down.
Can I say something?
Go on.
I think that the All-Ireland final this year was more entertaining than the Super Bowl final.
I would agree.
More entertaining.
Yeah, I'd agree. I totally agree. I think there's no controversy in that. I would even go as far to say it was obviously more entertaining than the World Cup soccer final, which was awful. And I would say it would be more entertaining than most sports games you'll have watched. And I would advise everyone to watch it, and you'll learn it pretty quick. It's not hard to learn. And these guys are amateurs. They don't get paid. It's insane. 82,500 people come to watch the play.
The thing about it, they don't get paid. It's crazy. They're 6 days a week training for this stuff, man. It's mad. Absolutely mad.
No, in saying that, the Mayo lads that won there yesterday will never have to buy a pint in their life ever again. We'll get free cars sent to their house. We'll get free daughters probably sent to their house as well, but let's not talk about that too much. Insane stuff. We got right. Are we any other one to talk about, or are we done?
I mean, if you get anything else you want to talk about, I'm happy to keep talking if you want. I'm here all night.
I'm interested in your take on. I know Adam spoke about it, and please go back to the start of the show and also get involved in the last. We'll stay on for another 10 minutes. Get involved in the show and ask us any questions you want. Even if the question are you guys on Spotify? There's the first question in. Tony, are we on Spotify? I'm asking the wrong person.
We were on Spotify, but I stopped uploading the episodes on there because I felt like more people were just watching us than they were listening back. But Danny, for you, my man, if you want, I will absolutely upload this episode onto Spotify, and along with any further episodes, if people are going to listen to it on there, I'm absolutely up for that. I can do that. I can do that after the show.
Danny, what you must do though is you must follow the YouTube channel, follow the Twitter handle, give us a follow, give us a like, 5-star review, all that other stuff that I don't understand what happens from it, but it's meant to be very good. Do all those things and tell one other friend. So I'm not asking you to tell the world, just tell one other person that there's a Bear Down Abroad podcast that is there to listen to and be involved. I want to talk a little bit actually about a position that not a lot of people have been speaking about that much, and around that would be for me a really important part of our game, which would be our running back room. We got Swift coming to an end of his contract, 1 year left. If you're looking at it now, and Swift is on, I think he's on, I don't know what he's on. Was he on 8 million or something a year, or maybe it's more? I don't know. If you turn around now and said, if Swift's agent arrived in your door, and you were Ryan Powles, knocks on your door and said, we'll do 2 more, and we'll do it at a little bit of a reduced rate of, I don't know, 6 million, 6.5, 7 million. But we need a decision now. What would you be saying to him?
So this is to sign a new contract to stay longer.
Yeah, renew Swift, have him stay with Monungai, but and a reduced rate. So you get him at a decent. It's not the massive wage because you're going to have to go out and replace Monungai, replace Swift with somebody. And Monungai's only in year 2. Do you say yes or no?
Right now, or can I wait until maybe like week 8? See what's happening.
No.
Right
the agent
put me on the spot right now. I would. How old is DeAndre Swift now? What is he?
27, 28. Keep answering that, and I'll find out the answer for you. Go on there.
If he's 27, 28, yeah, I'd bring him back on a 3-year deal, 2-3-year deal. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think he can.
Yeah, 27.
Yeah. He's just entering his peak at this point. Like this is him getting into his stride, pun intended. So yeah, listen, I think between Swift and Monungai, we've got 2 solid running backs there. Like you different styles of running backs, but you absolutely need that. I think DeAndre Swift, what he provided to us as a team last season, absolutely, he's still the lead back. There's no doubt about that. I think you're going to see more Kyle Monungai this year than you did last year. But if you're sharing those carries, it's less impact on the body as well. So you're going to last a bit longer. Yeah, I don't think it's controversial to say that Swift has been a good addition. I think the biggest concern is beyond Swift and Monungai. We don't really have anything. I don't believe in Roschon Johnson. I don't think he's ever going to be a player that's going to make any significant impact on this team. I know you got the guys like Britton Brown, who will absolutely be there as a depth guy who I think can make some sort of impact. Who else have we got? I'm just looking at the roster just now. Salvin Ahmed. I think that's about it.
Some free UDFA guy we had as well. I can't remember his name. Cole something.
Bennett.
I agree.
Bennett, yeah.
I agree with you. I think Swift has been one of those under the radar, a bit like Jackson as well. That kind of like no one really talks about them, but they are so massively important cogs in this offense of how it works, and they don't get the love that obviously Caleb, but don't get the love of a Luther Burden or a Colson Loveland or even a Cole Komet, and even a Kyle Monungai. And I think people forget that Monungai gets a lot of the credit because of what Swift is doing in that 1-2 punch. And I love the idea of having a 1-2 punch in a running back room, because I think it makes it difficult for defenses to understand. Swift is also really good in the backfield. I think he's a really good catcher of the football, and his blocking has improved massively, as has Monungai's as the season went by. I think they keep going, it'll increase. I also find it funny that everything's moved on in football so much that you need a double threat running back. I remember when I first started watching football, or even 5 years ago, we'd have sat in this room and you'd be like, you could get anyone to be running back. And I get the point. No, but I get the point. Look, at the end of the day, Kyle Monungai is a 7-round pick. Like that actually happened, right? But what I love about the way the game has moved on a bit now is you do need that from running back, but you also now need him to block, catch, run, do all these other elements of it, almost throw in some scenarios. And I think we're definitely moving in that right direction. I don't think Roschon Johnson will be on the team for the same reasons that I don't think Kyler Gordon will be on the team, purely because of injury history, and Ben has no interest in that. But I would also be saying yes to a contract renewal for Swift now, if that, based on my stipulation earlier on, I'd be saying yes to it, because I think it just continues that system where Kyler gets comfortable with who his running backs are, he's comfortable with who his offensive line is, he's comfortable with who his weapons are, and it allows him to really feel it's his team, and they get used to being in the Ben Johnson tread.
Just the guys, to put that in context, on a previous podcast that we used to be a part of, I had made a comment where I had said that because we were arguing about running backs and who would be a better running back, and there's definitely different tiers of running backs. The argument I made is that if you have a good enough scheme and offensive line, you can get just about anybody who's athletic enough.
Off the streets was the word you used. Off the streets.
Athletes on the street, they don't have a job. Come on, let's do it. So that was the context. That isn't just you can get it. Obviously, you have to have the scheme, you have to have the offensive line, all that kind of stuff. But as you say, it just goes to show you can pick up great players that can play running back at any point in the draft, really. It's just obviously, trying to find the specific fits for what you're looking for. I think there's an opportunity for the Bears to maybe go out there and maybe add someone else who's currently, kicking about. You're going to have roster cuts as well that are going to be coming up in the coming weeks. I think the Bears would absolutely look to add a running back at that point. Because, as I said, I don't think behind the front two guys you've got a lot going on there. I expect Roschon Johnson to be a cut candidate, unless he does something absolutely phenomenal in the next couple of weeks. But I think he's been there long enough, and I really don't believe that he's going to be someone who's going to make an impact in the team. And yeah, listen, it's not just the running back, the cut candidates as well. You can find a lot of guys in there that folk are not thinking about right now who might be able to come and do a job at any of the other positions of need that we're talking about. We talk about corner being a concern. We talked about pass rush being a concern. They might even look to bring in more wide receivers. It really depends. And we also don't know who we're going to cut either. Like Lee says in the chat, there's some massive roster decisions to come. There absolutely are some huge decisions to come. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was something relatively shocking that happened at some point before the season started. Whether that's an incoming move or an outgoing move, I don't know. But I think you have to be open to all possibilities. And I think especially where the Bears are now, being a team that who want to compete, or who can compete rather, and who will be up there with the top teams, in my opinion. You have to make those moves and be brave. You talked about it earlier on, the big Khalil Mack trade back in 2018. That was an all-in move. That was pushing the chips into the table and going, show me your
But that was done. It's so Ryan Pace, that move. That was done without having all the foundations there. Like, ironically, and I put a tweet out, I think it was last week, about this. Ironically, a Khalil Mack move now would make a hell of a lot more sense, because we've got the quarterback, we've got the head coach, we've got the weapons on offense, and this just adds to our defense. Do I think they should do it? Probably not, but I get it. If it came out, and you can say what you want about who that would be, but if it came out and they went after, I don't know, one of the big name defensive tackles, or one of the big names, Jalen Carter, for example, off the Eagles. I'm just using that because the first thing that came to my head. If they went out and threw everything at that, don't do that, please. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But you get my point. If they went and did that, you would kind of sit there and go, Max Crosby, what I was trying to really think of. You get it, because they've got everything else in place. When we did the Mac trade, even though it was awesome and epic and everyone felt, wow, this is insane, it was totally the wrong time to do it. And I think there's a interesting scenario coming up as to what exactly the Bears now do if there is that big trade. Because before you move on, I think we're three players in that 53 that will be announced that aren't in Chicago right now. I think at least three players are going to be coming into that team that make the 53.
You put that question out in the X. I keep saying X. It's Twitter.
Twitter.
You put it out on Twitter last week or whatever it was, and you were asking the question, Mason Crosby. Do you still think the Mason Crosby move
Max
is
Crosby.
on the table?
Max Crosby.
Who's Mason Crosby? Max
He's
Crosby.
a kicker.
Max Crosby. The Max Crosby move is still on the table. As you put a lot of kind of possibilities in terms of what
I genuinely believe
you think it's still on the table. Great. If it is, what's the maximum you give up there?
See, it depends on what you give up versus what the Raiders will accept. So that's the reason why I threw in the bonkers trade at the start, which included Roma Dunze and Austin Booker, knowing full well I was going to get kicked back on that. But my point was, if I'm a Raiders fan, that's what I would have asked for.
Yeah.
Because they want the wide receiver for their rookie quarterback, number one pick. They want a young edge rusher, and they want some other picks on top of that. That's the reason why I mentioned that. I think if you're a Bears fan, you're going, okay, well, he no matter what, he failed a medical. Whether you believe that medical or not, whether you believe all this other stuff or not, he failed a bag of popcorn. He failed that medical. Like, that depends on the popcorn, man. So for me, I think
and salted. That's my choice. Sorry, there you go.
You see, salted definitely. Don't disagree with that.
And salted. Sorry, continue.
I think you're looking at least a first this year plus a player, and I think that player they will ask. They the only way you get them thinking about it will be Austin Booker, or Gervon Dexter, someone that they feel is young enough that they want to develop, and I think on top of that, if it's just a first Austin Booker, they'll want at least a second in the year after. Do I do that? Probably. I have to see the medical, obviously, but it's a hell of a lot of money. Suddenly our defensive line becomes really, really, we put all our money into that. Definitely be the number one spend on that offensive line. But would I want Max Crosby on this football team? Can't say I wouldn't.
I'm not convinced by it, right? What was it? The Ravens. Oh, and just on the story of Ravens.
First.
Right? I've got a story to tell you after this quickly before we finish. 2 firsts they offered, right? I think that's madness, right? The injury concerns. He's going to be 29 before the season starts as well. You know, like, for me, I'm going nowhere near a first round pick, and I know at the end of the day that's what they're going to want to get. You know, and it's realistic. I just think for the Bears and where they're at, I just don't think investing that in a guy like Max Crosby is a smart move long term. You know, the injury thing in itself, for me, is scaring me away. And listen, if he stays healthy, the return on it's great. You know, the return in terms of what you do, fantastic.
Can I throw something back at you now? Okay, sure. Detroit Lions. If Hutchinson doesn't get injured 2 years ago, they win the Super Bowl. Yeah. I think that's a fair fair assumption to make. So therefore, I believe what are the Bears away from winning? They're away from having that edge attack that gives them a chance. So here's a question for you. If the Bears got Max Crosby, won the Super Bowl next year, and then were in cap hell, which meant they had to get rid of players over the next 3 years. So in 4 years' time, right, we're sitting there with our Super Bowl win, and Max Crosby's contract's come to an end, and we've had 3 years where we've just got into the playoffs or kind of ended up in the middle of the NFC North. But we had that Super Bowl win. Would you take that? Or we develop and we get to the NFC Championship game. We might get to a Super Bowl but not win it. We'll be thereabouts, and we'll be in a position that everyone's like, okay, the Bears are like really close to getting that little knock on, and maybe they'll be able to develop their own in 3 years' time over that period. Which would you want?
Well, am I winning the Super Bowl at the end of the development phase?
No, you don't know that. No, you don't know that.
All right. Well, you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, the main idea here is to win the Super Bowl. Like, that is your main goal every single year. So in that sense, I would say, yeah, you'd obviously take the Super Bowl. But at the same time, you want to be a sustained franchise who are there and doing it as a dynasty, for
Buffalo
years.
Bills.
Yeah, well, you talk. I look at the Patriots under Tom Brady, that sort of thing. That's what I would rather be, and they never ever made those sort of moves, really. So yeah, listen, we've waited long enough. We can wait another year or two. I just don't see the. Well, I get the attraction of Max Crosby, absolutely. In terms of what he can do, is great. But 29-year-old injuries, a lot of. The fact that trade fell through, for me, just too many red flags. So for me, for that reason, I'm out.
The only thing I will say is
investing in your trade idea. That's not for me.
The only thing I will say is there's the New York Patriots with Tom Brady was something that's not normal in American football. It's just not normal. What is much more normal is what happened to the Detroit Lions, what's happened to Buffalo Bills, what's happened to the Ravens. That's much more normal, where you're just there or thereabouts and don't have that thing that kicks you over the top. And I would be of the opinion that you don't get long shots. The window isn't open long. I don't care what any Lions fans say to me. I think the window's closed. And I think for me, oh God, it's got to be tempting. That's all. Man, look, I'm an impulsive man, so maybe that's the reason why.
Well, we can explore that further on another show. Quickly before we go as well, I'll tell you that story in a minute. Just very quickly, I mentioned it earlier on the show. Well, Adam was on. We're running another giveaway competition for one of these lovely trucker FGB hats from Tally Brand, who we are officially partnered with.
It looks like Dangle.
It kind of does look like Dangle. Dangle, is that you? Are you still in the chat? Can you let us know if that's you, man? Because you're obviously moonlighting as a Tally Brand model. The looks of it. Nice car as well. But the plan is, and I haven't put this out yet, but can everyone subscribe to the show, follow us on X, and then when I put out the tweet, if you can retweet that and like it as well, that's all you need to do to enter it. So just follow us, subscribe, retweet, like, all that jazz, tell a pal, get them to tell their pal, so on and so forth. And you could win the chance of winning one of these lovely hats. You can also get it in white if you prefer as well. I quite like the white one, to be honest with you. But it's only because I have 7 hats that are this color. So I should probably mix things up a little bit. But and what do you think of the trucker hat? It's nice, isn't it?
I thought you were going to ask me what you think of the car. Yeah, I love the hat. I love Tally Brand. I'd say over and over again, Rob, if you're still here and you've got an extra hoodie that you want to throw my way, I'd be more than happy to take it. But go on the tallybrand.com website. Some of the gear that's there. And also Rob is a great guy and he's a Bears fan. Sends you the stickers. I say it again. We got the hats and got the stickers, and Rob puts a little personal note on one of the letters. He is a Bears fan. You should go nowhere else for merchandise than Tallybrand Co. Or tallybrand.com. He's really, really good. As Lee says, better than I could possibly ever say, Tallybrand is the dog's bollocks. So I totally agree with that. As well as, lads, make sure we're doing the competitions because we want you guys to be involved in shows. We've got some amazing. Oh, that's it. Even put. We forgot to even say this. Did we put the code abroad for your purchase? Get free stickers. Even better. But all I say is we're trying to get this growing. We've started from scratch. So having Tony back on this, we've got loads of great plans. We've loads of great guests. As I said, we've Adam Hoge on this one. We've got a few more lads coming on, and there are people that are contacting us now wanting to come on, which is unusual, but it's brilliant. Got Tally Brand obviously connected to us. We work really hard, so please do subscribe to the show on Twitter. Please subscribe on or follow the show on X. We want to get up to 500. I know that sounds like a small number, but we're going to get to 500 by the time camp is over and before the competition's done, and we need your help to do it. And also we're going to do. We're going to do. We've said it all along. We're going to do follow-ons when games are on. So people, no matter where you are around the world, you can follow us, and we're going to watch the games. And even if you're a Packers fan, you want to come on and watch me lose my meltdown if we do an interception, so that's going to happen. Please do. Looking for that'll imagine me having a rant.
Guys, next Monday we've got Taylor Doll coming on from Second City Gridiron or Windy City Gridiron, or Windy City Gridiron. So it's going to be great to get a chat with her. We will also have Peggy Kaczynski coming on at some point.
Superstar.
Peggy's excellent. You'll have seen her on ESPN, and she's one of our favourite people, so we can chat with her again. Guys, as I said, please, if you can, subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitter. Follow Ant on Twitter. You can follow me if you want on Twitter as well. I'm releasing Ant's much more interesting than me. But we're going to be back next Monday, so hopefully tune in there. And until we speak next week, remember to bear down, look after yourself, and God bless.
Good night.